Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Connect, president of Universal Accounting Center, and this is a show dedicated to helping you operate and offer quality accounting services, basically servicing the small business community with great services as it relates to bookkeeping, accounting, and tax, and get paid what you're worth. It's here on the show that we interview and have guests on to basically share with us their expert advice as it relates to these various topics, ranging from marketing, selling, pricing, tech stacks, mental health, and a variety of things that are applicable to our being the most successful we can be. It's here that we build the premier accounting firm in our area. That being said, I'd like to actually mention that I've got a guest on that I'm excited to actually speak with. He's someone I've heard publicly speaking, and I've invited him to the show because I felt that he had a lot of insights that are worth sharing here. Apoorv happens to be a garnering acclaim individual with the public practice professionals and senior firm leaders. He actually demystifies marketing for accounting, bookkeeping, and tax and advisory professionals. He is the founder of Fixer Marketing and is referred as basically a business advisor. He distinguishes marketing strategies working for leading firms in the accounting industry. His dynamic and engaging speaking style, coupled with actionable insights, make him a valuable resource for professionals seeking to elevate their marketing efforts and achieve sustainable growth. So, Apoorv, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot for having me here, Roger.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun because I think one of the things that really resonates with a lot of my listeners is the intent of growing the business, the purpose of wanting to actually get more clients and grow the firm. But there's a lot of questions I want to ask you before we dive into it. First of all, I just want to know a little bit of a backstory as it relates to accounting, how you got to working with accounting professionals in the essence of growing top line revenue.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because when I was in school, like back in university days, I started out doing a major in accounting, and fourth year, I was just about done my accounting major, and I was like, "Man, this really sucks. I'm going to switch to marketing," and I did because I really enjoyed marketing and I really enjoyed strategy. And I didn't pursue the accounting side at all. I went actually into the marketing stream
Okay.
and worked it for a long time, kind of with financial firms, banking, that type of stuff. And then had an opportunity with a large CPA accounting and consulting firm. And so I went into that and basically kind of leaning on all of my previous financial services marketing experience. That kind of opened the door to me. And then, spent some time within a few firms before I actually ended up going out on my own and setting up Fixer. And now we work exclusively with accounting, bookkeeping, tax, and advisory firms across North America.
I love it. Now, one of the things that's interesting is you had that introduction to accounting. You obviously didn't pursue it,
Yeah.
got into the marketing, but I want to talk about the entrepreneur. You started your own business. What took you from wanting to work in the firm and take care of the marketing needs as it related to the company to going out and starting your own business?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, a little bit of a personal insight to myself. Um, there was a time there, honestly, where I was kind of hopping around between a few different firms, and I think it. I came to the conclusion. It took me a while to figure it out, but I came to the conclusion that I'm probably not a good person for large organizations. In the sense that, for your listeners that are out there within CPA firms or consulting firms, as you get more and more senior, right, you take on more responsibilities, and you have the opportunity to move into a partner type role. And I was kind of right at that cusp. And really, the thing is, I wasn't good at the politics side of being in a large organization, for lack of a better description. I think I was really good at what I did in terms of strategy. I think I was a very good marketer. I think I'm a very kind of creative, innovative person, very analytical, good team leader, but not really. I'd say, I'm the type of person that calls a spade a shovel, and there's times where that's maybe not the best thing to do, right? When you're in large organizations. So, I ran into that a few times, or as my wife would probably describe it more, putting my foot in my mouth, um, and realize, okay, you know what, that large organizational dynamic is not for me. But I really enjoy what I do, and I see opportunity, right? So, I think that's probably the key thing is I always see opportunity in things, and so I thought, okay, um, I've worked with a lot of professionals. I've helped them build successful practices, helped organizations build brand and all sorts of marketing programs and programs and other things. So why not build my own?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that because one of the things I think a lot of my listeners can relate to is the fact that, like you, they're great at what they do, but it may not be in the environment of an employment position. It's possibly they can
Sure.
do very good at what they do when they're working with clients. And that peer to peer interaction is a lot easier to negotiate and navigate than it is that employer relationship where you're the employee. And some people just thrive when they're able to run their own company. And that's where the spirit of being an entrepreneur kind of takes off and helps us each out. So I appreciate you giving us that backstory. So let's dive into the marketing. Clearly, that's your expertise. That's what you do. You chose to
Hmm.
niche into the accounting space. Maybe we can talk about the choice there to more or less niche your services. But I'd like to start with the definition of marketing. What is marketing? A lot of people will confuse marketing and sales, and I'm curious how you would define marketing specifically.
So there's all sorts of different academic definitions that are out there, right? And I'm sure a lot of your listeners, they've been through a business school and they've probably taken a marketing class or an MBA program or something else like that. But the way I communicate to folks within professional services firms, within accounting firms, is say, what, let's put the academic definitions aside for a second for our purposes, as we talk about the firm's marketing and your marketing strategy, I'm going to define marketing as all of the things that you do to create revenue opportunities in your business. So repeat that. All of the things that you do to create revenue opportunities in your business. So, what's the distinction between marketing and sales, marketing and business development and sales, branding, marketing? Let's not worry about those terms, right? It's here's all the things that we need to do. Now, you know, how you set that up in a GL and how you budget for it, the accountants can figure that out, right? Like it doesn't have to be, it's only these marketing GLs over here, right? So again, think about here's all the things that you need to do to create revenue opportunities for your business or in your practice, regardless of where they may sit in a GL.
Interesting. I appreciate that. I'm going to go a little deeper, and I don't know that I'm getting academic here, but I'm going to definitely be a little bit more specific. When I'm working with my clients, I do draw a very distinct delineation between marketing and sales. And the way I choose to define it is marketing is everything that you're doing prior to the individual self-selecting and identifying themselves as a potential customer, which is to say, up until the point that I don't know who you are, I'm marketing to you because you haven't self-selected. You haven't told me that you're a potential customer. But the moment I have identified you, you've maybe filled out a form, you've given me your contact information, you were referred to me, we were introduced. The moment I know who you are individually, from that point on, I'm selling you. I've got to put you through a nurture campaign. I've got to elevate you to a
Sure.
point that you're educated as to my services. I've got to have you see me as the authority in the space that I'm in. That's all sales, all leading up to what you've just defined as that engagement, that transfer of funds where you're actually saying, I'm willing to pay for whatever services you're offering. So clearly the marketing, it's more the branding, it's more the public facing efforts that I'm putting forth to actually generate that initial contact. Once I know who you are, the position changes, the game changes because now I've got to now educate you and position myself with you for your wanting to spend money with me. So that's perhaps semantics at this point, but nonetheless, I think it's very important to kind of distinguish with those. But the definition that you've got, we're going to run with that. And I want to now ask, why do accounting firms need a market? So many of them, their first thing is I work on referral. I just grow my business on referral. I don't spend money. I don't spend time. I just grow my business on referrals. Well, at the same time, I've got listeners that are saying, I'd love to grow my business. I would love to know how I can effectively spend my time and money to grow the company. What would you say an accounting firm needs to do and why as it relates to marketing?
Actually, let me first kind of tackle the comment about referrals, right?
Uh-huh.
So, um, I hear this a lot, right? I go out to different conferences and different events and stuff that presenting at or leading workshops at. And I ask folks in the audience, often partners within various practices, how they've grown their business to where they are right now. And most of them will say referrals and word of mouth.
Hmm.
And then the follow-up question I ask them is, okay, how many of you have a proactive strategy for referrals? And I'll be lucky if even 5% of them put up their hand. So, even the folks that have grown through referrals, they've kind of done it in a haphazard way. They haven't done
Hmm.
it in necessarily a strategic way, right? So, if you want to continue to grow through referrals, maybe you want better quality referrals. Maybe you want more systematic or predictable referrals. Maybe you're not getting the quantity of referrals you need to grow your business. Maybe you're not getting the quality of referrals that you need to grow your business, right? So, and that's just the referral component of what we look at. But you know, uh, um, beyond that, a lot of the folks that are leading firms, when I talk to them, they're when we get into conversations about the types of problems they're facing, they'll say things like, "Okay, they're just trying to sell to anyone and everyone." Um, they're not really sure what they should be doing for marketing or what makes sense right now. They're attracting the wrong types of clients. They have clients, but it's not the ideal type of client that they want to service or the type of service that they want to sell. They're not attracting enough to meet their growth objectives, right? Or they're spending money and they're not seeing results from that. So all of those things are um, marketing strategy related problems to solve.
Hmm.
So when we talk about marketing, I always kind of say tactics or strategy before tactics. Sorry, which is a term I got from John Jantz from Duct Tape Marketing. But it's a great way to kind of put marketing into context, particularly for firm owners and partners. Right? Um, do you need to do something on a website? Do you need to do something on social media? Do you need to do, a particular brochure or whatever? I don't know. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. What you do need to figure out is a strategy that will help you grow the firm, the types of clients, and for the types of services that you want to grow the firm for to meet your business plan objectives in the future.
Well, I
That's not
like
going to
it.
come by haphazard word of mouth.
Yeah, I liked how you address strategy versus tactics. You have to have a plan. You have to have intent. You have to have something you're specifically working towards, and that'll identify what tactics to do and how to do those tactics. But I want to go back to the referral thing. A lot of people I do speak with do bring up, like you indicated, referrals as being a primary source of their leads, their referrals. And one of the things that's interesting is, like you pointed out, they're reactionary. It's accidental. It's not intentional. It's not deliberate. It's not because they have a strategy built around here's how I go about acquiring or generating referrals. It's just people like me, and I'm good at having people tell
Sure.
me who to talk to next. Well, let's make it a little bit more deliberate and intentional, and let's actually manage the business around intentionally generating referrals and see what we can do there. And what also will come from that is the ability to now acknowledge and reward those people that are sending you people to encourage them to send even more, simply because they're clearly advocates for you. They're talking about you, but they're not in a sense being rewarded for that. And it's nice to be able to give them a thank you of sorts to encourage more of that same behavior. So I like what you're describing there. So let me move into something that I know you discuss and you talk a lot about, and it's this whole philosophy as it relates to hunting, fishing, farming in the context of lead generations. And in accounting, I think this is something that they'll actually resonate with. They'll appreciate this analogy. So what can you say about hunting, fishing, and farming as it relates to lead generation?
So yeah, I mean that whole model is, basically kind of, if you take yourself and put yourself, say, back in caveman days type thing, right? And you need food to survive. Where are you getting those food sources from, right? And so that's the analogy for where accounting and advisory firms are getting their new customers from. The hunting model is what you might call business development, right? Is where you've got dedicated folks and you're going out and you're specifically targeting different types of firms, and you're being proactive in being outbound and reaching out to them. Now, that type of approach, business development, account-based marketing, there's a lot of different terms that people use around that. It can be very successful, but like in the days of the cave people, if you manage to bag that giant woolly mammoth, great. It's feast for whatever period of time, right? But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of lean times. It's a lot of running to actually get that giant woolly mammoth, right? So, if you're in a market or a place where there's an abundant opportunity, or lots of those large opportunities around you, and you're confident you have the people and the systems in place to be able to do that, fantastic. But it takes some effort, and particularly when we're dealing with folks in the accounting advisory space, a lot of folks are not naturally very oriented towards sales and business development themselves, right? So, if they bring in a dedicated BD rep, or have an in-house outside sales team or something that they set up, okay, that's fine. But you have to have dedicated resources for that, right? So you have to be a firm of a particular size to be able to commit to that, and it is a long-term investment, right? So that's the hunting model. The fishing model is kind of what you see with a lot of marketing stuff that's out there, which is basically you throw something out, right? Some type of lure, and you just leave it out there and hope that the fish are going to bite and you can reel them in, right? And what is that lure? Well, it could be something that gets their attention in the way of content, studies, advertising that's out there, right? You're trying to get their attention, get them to bite, right, and reel them in. So in the marketing world, a lot of people call that inbound marketing or content marketing, right? So SEO, paid advertising, I would put all those things kind of under that umbrella. And that, again, that is that can work for a lot of firms as well, in different circumstances. The challenge with that approach is you have to really know where you're fishing, and the type of bait that you're putting in the water to get that attention, right? If you're fishing in the wrong place, there's no fish. If you have the wrong bait, the fish aren't going to bite, right? So, that's the analogy there with the inbound marketing stuff, right? Is, basically you try and grab their attention, you try and get them to come in, right? And probably a lot of your listeners are familiar with this. They've seen an ad, they've seen a post or something, they've clicked on it. It's asking them to fill out a form to download a study, or something along those lines. They fill out their information, they download it, and then they start to receive this marketing afterwards, right? Um, they're being sent emails, maybe phone calls, texts, whatever the case may be, right? So that's again, that's kind of that type of funnel approach there. The third, the farming, is coming back to what we are talking about on the referral side, right? So farming, you have to sow the seeds, right? You have to plant and you have to nurture them, and you have to create the environment for the food to grow. And it takes time, right? It doesn't happen overnight. You can't plant a seed and get a full bushel of crops the next day. That's not going to happen. It takes time to do. And so in the farming situation, basically, you've got your firms that they're building their reputation, right? So I don't like to use the term brand. That's confusing for a lot of folks, but let's say they're building their reputation, right? So what the firm is known for, what their partners, what their individuals are known for, and they're creating these relationships, ideally strategic partnerships and relationships out there with other folks that are also working with their target audience, um, to create this kind of long-term nurture where they've got this steady stream of referrals coming into them. So it takes time to build up, but once activated, and you set up properly, you can get a really good stream of constant, good quality referrals coming to you. Now, between those kind of three different models, there's no right or wrong answer, right? So I don't say, you have to only, go to the farming model. There's no right or wrong answer. It's going to depend on the firm and what their business goals and objectives are and who they're trying to attract.
Well, using your analogies, I'm going to say two things. One, I agree with you. Some people will consider themselves great hunters, but not great fishermen. Some people will
Sure.
consider themselves great hunters, but not great farmers, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I think that analogy is appropriate to say there's certain skills and abilities. But I would also point out that with some, there's kind of the feast or famine. It's kind of like you said with the mammoth. It's a big thing. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to take care of this, get the big client, and be done with it, and then not acquire a new client for months. And I might be fine with that. But you know what? I'm going to 3-4 months down the line have to now go into that hunt mode, and I'm going to have to now try and find that next client. Where some are a little bit more intentional and deliberate, they're a little bit more long term. There's a strategy behind it, and it might be more relating to that farming approach where I'm basically saying I'm planting the seeds, I'm trying to nurture these relationships, and I'm trying to have this drip of clients coming into the firm on a regular cadence. And that's something that I would rather have rather than feast or famine. I'm just trying to have this small little cadence going on. And you're right, there's not a right or a wrong answer. It's just what type of business model do you want to build. And for some, they like the fact that they're able to get that big large client. Others are fine with the smaller cadence of clients. It's just basically which can you do. So here's what I'd like to do, and I'd like to now go to the point of saying, is there a way to create a balanced lead generation approach to all of this, something that is manageable and something that I can sleep at nights knowing I've got something intentional in place?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? That's, when we get engaged to do marketing audits of firms, that's one of the things that we look at is, do they have all their eggs in one basket, so to speak, in terms of just getting all their leads and new customers from one source, or do they have a balanced portfolio approach? And
Mhm.
so, um, different analogy that I'll use, in most of your listeners will be familiar with portfolio management theory, right? In investment management. So, you're managing a portfolio of assets and you're trying to get a rate of return off of that. Some are going to be riskier than others, and for that risk, you expect a higher rate of return. There's going to be other ones that are going to be low risk, but they also come with a lower rate of return, right? And you don't put everything into a single one. You try to diversify as much as possible to balance out that risk. Sometimes some will perform better than others, and so you want to manage that risk. And so, absolutely, it's important to have that balanced approach. So, for almost all firms, when we get into their marketing strategy, we start by trying to identify, okay, who are the types of ideal target customers that they want to work with. And we ask them to prioritize that. And, I actually have a question that I'll ask them by order of priority. Who are your ideal target customers, and why should they choose to deal with you versus any
Mm.
other option they may have? Almost no firm can answer that succinctly. And I'm talking, like, I've been in billion-dollar firms that weren't able to answer that. I've been in small single owner operated firms that they couldn't answer that either. Some people do a pretty good job with it. Almost everyone kind of struggles with the one, who am I prioritizing, right? Second part is they struggle with, the second part of the question: why should they choose to deal with you versus
Mhm.
any other option they may have?
Yeah.
But once you've got that figured out up front, then you can say, okay, now what's my best method of reaching out to that customer base, that those folks? And for almost all firms, it's usually a combination of a referral strategy and something else. So, referral strategy takes a while to set up, to do in a strategic, proactive way. Usually, when we look at doing that, we look at who are strategic partners that they can collaborate with. Why would those strategic partners want to collaborate with them to begin with? Right? What could that look like? So that takes a little bit of time to kind of set that up and get going. And the challenge with those referral programs as well is, um, it takes time to set up. The initial flow is going to be unpredictable, so it's going to be hard to assess how many leads are coming from different places, right? Until you actually go work through that, yeah, you have no idea. And so, that, to offset the risk from that, firms should look at some other form of lead generation. And that those other forms of lead generation, again, it's no one size fits all answer. It depends on the firm, and it depends more so on who's that audience that they're trying to reach and attract. Because once you have that set, then you can try to figure out, okay, what's the best way to reach out to those folks? Is it through a hunting approach, through business development and outbound sales type approach? Is it a phishing approach, right, through content and or advertising and thought leadership, or those types of things, right? So there's, is it digital? Is it traditional, events and conferences and sponsorships? Right. So it's a matter of kind of coming up with what that other form of lead generation system is going to be that up. That also takes time to identify and to set up, right? And usually it takes some time to kind of get it set up, work it, start getting early results come in, refine it, work it again, refine it, etc. Right, that whole
Yeah.
kind of process. So
Well, one of the things that I'm impressed by is you actually said a lot of things there without using the traditional vocabulary, the vernacular that are generally used in the marketing explanation of having a defined avatar, your ideal client, your unique
yeah,
selling proposition. There's a lot of key terms in there that are traditionally used as explaining what you just described, and you did so in a very layman term way, and I appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of my accounting professionals appreciated the fact that you weren't using these terms that they either have heard or weren't necessarily familiar with. Now, as it relates to then coming up with this strategy, one of the things I can relate to is with our clients, we emphasize what we call the rule of thumb. And it's basically saying we want to identify within the organization 4 proven methods to acquire clients and be testing a fifth. And it's intended to say, you need to have multiple strategies out there because eventually one may no longer work, or
yep,
one may be more effective or have a better ROI than another. So there's time and cost that you need to consider with each of those methods. And we always want to be testing. So with that said, it leads me to the question of, with all these things that you mentioned, there's got to be ways to measure success or define success as it relates to key metrics that we're focusing on. What are some of the key metrics that you find are essential for an accounting firm to kind of identify and follow as they're trying to evaluate their lead generation efforts?
yeah. So the number one question that I get firm owners and partners to ask themselves is, how many leads did you generate and where did they come from?
Hmm.
Ask yourself that question on a monthly basis, not on a quarterly basis, not on an annual basis. At that point, it's kind of too late to look back and collect the data to see what was working, what didn't. But if you start from that point, how many leads did I generate? You can then dissect that and turn that into a whole bunch of other things. So if you start with the metric around the number of leads generated, you can look at, okay, the number of leads generated by channel. All of the folks in the accounting space, very good at tracking numbers, very
Yep.
analytical. If you've got the number of leads by channel, you can now assign a cost to that. So, what was your cost per lead through those channels? So, if you know what the total marketing costs were that you put into a particular channel or strategy, you can take those costs and then dissect and say, okay, we spent X amount this month and we generated Y number of leads, and so our cost per lead is blank. Once you have a cost per lead, now you can start to say, okay, which forms of lead generation are more effective than others. You can also take that cost per lead and then say, how many of those converted?
Hmm.
So by conversion, we mean, how many of them turned into a sale. You
Yes.
could, I mean, depending on the firm, you might want to break it down, say, how many became a qualified lead or how many turned into a proposal and then into a sale, whatever the steps are along the way. But basically, go from cost per lead to cost per acquisition, right?
Yep.
So you want to be able to identify what is it actually costing you to generate a new customer, right? Once you've got those metrics, now you're saying, okay, we're generating a certain number of leads from these channels, and it's costing us a certain amount. It's costing us a certain amount to generate a new customer overall. Now we've got the most important metrics in terms of being able to determine what's working, what isn't, where we need to adjust our marketing strategy and our marketing tactics. There's a whole bunch of other marketing metrics that are out there. People will talk about, size of audiences and brand impressions and all sorts of stuff. I'm not saying that stuff's not important, but it's at the end of the day, what matters is how many sales you made,
Yep.
right? And so let's back out from there what we can to get to that point.
Good, very good. And I'm going to add to some of the numbers that you just mentioned and repeat a few as well. But I think some of the metrics that my audience would appreciate, and you're correct, as accounting professionals, we like numbers. So give us the numbers. We
Yeah.
like the numbers. But I think we want to reverse engineer this by saying, okay, what's the lifetime value of a client? And in AICPA, they indicate that the average firm keeps a bookkeeping or accounting client for as many as 7 years. Well, that's important to know. If you're making, let's say, $5,000 a year in annualized revenue, and you've got now 7 years with that client's worth $35,000 to you. Now, the other is the annualized revenue. What's that revenue that you're going to be earning from a client, whether it's the bookkeeping, tax, accounting type services that you're earning? And you can just now go to the cost per acquisition. If I know that it's costing me, say, $1,000 to acquire a client because of maybe the ad spend, the lunches I'm going on, the networking that I'm doing, then I can clearly say that 5,000 a year client was worth $1,000 that I spent to acquire them, and that acquisition cost was justifiable. I'm fine spending $1,000 getting a $5,000 client. But if I don't know that the annualized revenue is $5,000, if I don't know that the worth is $35,000, that $1,000 acquisition might be hard to justify if I don't know the other numbers. And so to justify the $1,000 and feel good about spending the $1,000, both time and money, I need to know those two numbers. Now you reverse engineer it even further, and you want to look at then, okay, well, what's that cost to acquire the leads that I'm getting? What's the time involved? I'm looking at what my closing rate is. If I send out 5 letters of engagement and I net one, I know that I'm getting a certain closing rate. These numbers are fun to track. But one of the things that I would definitely also add to the equation is when you first meet the individual and add them to your CRM, your list of contacts, knowing that start date, that date that you initially began the conversation, I want to know what the average time to acquire them as a client is. When I meet somebody for the first time, do I get them within 4 weeks? Do I get them in 6 months? Do I get them in 12 months? What's my average acquisition? Because if I met somebody today, when can I anticipate I may get them as a client? Well, in 6 months, am I frustrated? Or am I saying, no, I'm on pace because I typically average 9 months to get a client? Knowing that number helps that anxiety of, is this worth it? Is it actually going to pay off? And am I going to be patient enough to get this as a client? So some of the numbers and metrics that I think are very key to follow. So would you add anything more to those?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that. The one thing I'd say is in the accounting and professional services world, the buyer is ready to buy when they're ready to buy.
Hmm.
And by that, what I mean is um, what we see a lot, particularly when we dissect CRM systems and lead nurture programs, things like that, is it's not always a linear process
Hmm.
that leads go through. It's kind of step by step by step, know, like, try, trust, buy, right? Like going through the steps, awareness, interest, consideration, purchase, right? Those types of things. And so what you'll see is you'll see leads kind of pop around between different stages, right? They may go back, they may go forth, etc. It is important to look at, what's the time in the pipeline. But what I would also say is important is one, to take a look at the size of your list or your audience, right? As you're building it up, you want to make sure you're continually adding to that, and the frequency of your interaction with the folks on that list, right? So, what are you doing to nurture them along and keep top of mind awareness with them over time? The larger that number is, the more you're building that up, the higher the quality of those interactions, the more folks are going to move down to later stages in the buying process.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that because although we may have a journey that we want the potential customer to go through towards becoming an engagement, although we've maybe thought out what that journey would ideally look like, you're right. They jump around, they come through at different phases. And as it relates to referrals, which many firms do grow their business on, the referral, once they've been sold by somebody else, a third party on the quality of your services and so forth, typically that referral comes with a pain that it necessitates an action. And so generally speaking, they're not going to go through the journey. They're coming coming in trusting you already because of the referral nature, and they're just simply going to say, I need your services. And that transaction can simply be days, if not weeks. And so it can be very much accelerated. So I appreciated that point. The one thing I would also want to bring up to this is with regards to the accounting profession, there are a lot of people that are reluctant or hesitant to really put a lot of time and energy into marketing because it's not natural. How do you deal with an accounting firm where they're just like, I love accounting, I'm great at what I do, but this whole marketing conversation, sales conversation, it's just so foreign to me. How do you actually help address that and help an accounting professional say, I do need to be deliberate and intentional and put time and energy towards this?
Yeah, so it is a real challenge for a lot of the folks. They get up into this position where they're either at partnership level or they're running their own business.
Hmm.
They're very good at the accounting side of what they do, but they're not necessarily good at the business development or the sales side or the marketing side. Um, what works best for accountants, this is my experience, is accountants are analytical, they're methodical individuals by and large, right? Everyone's different, sure, but by and large, they tend to be analytical and they tend to be methodical. And so putting in place a strategy and a plan that they can follow is a very good place to start because it gives them that clarity to say, here's where I'm going to focus, and all this other stuff I'm not going to worry about right now, right? So that is very helpful for them, right? Is be methodical, have that focus to what you're going to do with your marketing. And then, from there, actually activating the plan and putting it into place is another thing, right? It's one thing to come up with a plan, but we've probably all seen situations like this where people go through the exercise, they put together this wonderful business plan or marketing plan, and then it sits on the shelf collecting dust, right? Actually, I don't even know if that happens anymore because everything's electronic, right? It sits in like some random cloud server collecting dust.
It's on my desktop.
Somewhere. Yeah, it's somewhere. So, but that idea that like you go through the exercise and it just like then you never touch it again after that. So it's also important to put in a cadence for making sure that you're implementing the plan, you're tracking the right metrics afterwards. And again, like we talked about some things, asking yourself certain questions on a monthly basis, right? So, what did you work on this month? What are you doing to build your reputation? How many leads did you generate? Right. And then on a more regular basis, going back and saying, okay, do we understand why our customers are choosing us versus other options they have? Do we know what's going on with those other options? Do we understand our value proposition? Do we understand our customers? Right. Things, what are we doing around our relationships with our referral sources and strategic partners? There's a whole bunch of other steps you can't get into, right? But it's building that cadence
Hmm.
around, okay, we need to keep on top of this on a regular basis. A lot of firms, again, they build the plan, then sits tucked away, they never touch again. Or they think, you know what, I'm just going to get to this after busy season. I have to get through busy season first, and I'll come back to this. And then they don't come back to it, and it sits for another 3 months or 5 months, and now all of a sudden you're at year end and folks are going, oh, what did we do this year, what are we going to do next year, and they get stuck in that cycle, right? So having that regular cadence really helps folks. It's like working out, being healthy, right? You can't leave your fitness to I'm just going to work on it for 1 month out of the year. Doesn't work like that. I wish it did, but it doesn't. So you have to keep with it on a slow and steady basis constantly, right? And if you do that, you can be much, much further ahead than the firm or the individual that stops and starts.
Very good. No, I have experienced what you just described. A lot of the firm owners, what they really appreciate is a strategy. If you can give me kind of a turnkey process, a system I can follow, I'm more inclined to follow it. But at the end of the day, they do get busy. The business takes hold, and what they intended to do with the best of intentions, they delay, they put off. Busy season comes up in their mind, like I'll get around to this later, and they don't take the farming approach. They don't do that little bit of effort on a daily basis that really could pay off in the end. They look at it
Yeah.
more as I'll get around to it. I'll turn on the spigot later on, and hopefully something will come out of it at some point when I need it. And I don't too often see it working as easily as that. So that's very, very true. I do want to switch gears. We're nearing the end of the conversation here. Are there any misconceptions that accounting firms have as it relates to marketing, or more importantly, traps that they should be aware of to avoid? We've kind of addressed some of these or brought them up, but are there any in particular that come to mind for you?
Yeah, so a common one that we see is things like, okay, we need to become digital, right? We just need like a better website, or we need better social media. um, that's not going to solve your problems, right? If you don't know the customers that you're trying to attract, if you don't have a value proposition, or some type of benefit for that customer to want to work with you, if you don't have clarity around that, it doesn't matter what's on your website. And just updating your website, fine, but if you've got no traffic going to the website, or if it's the wrong traffic, then that doesn't help you either, right?
Hmm.
So um, I think a lot of times people will get stuck in the minutia of different types of tactics. So we have to have this, or we have to have that. Or the other thing that we get a lot is the latest greatest, right? There's some type of marketing guru that's out there that says, oh, you need to do this thing, right? And it's the thing with marketing is it's not a one size fits all, right? So what worked for another firm in another environment may or may not work for you. And we touched on this a little bit earlier. It also changes over time, right? So what worked for that firm 2 years ago may not work for that firm anymore, right? So I wish there was a quick, easy answer. There's no magic pill that you can take that's going to solve all of your problems. And I think a lot of the times, back to the fitness example again, is people are looking for that magic pill, right? I don't want to go through the hard work. I don't want to go through the regular exercise that it takes to get there. I just want that magic pill that's going to solve all my problems. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. But there is hope, and there is light at the end of the tunnel for folks to say, you know what, you can fix this. You can fix your marketing situation, put in place a strategy that's going to work for you and your firm, and in place for long-term success. Set that in place for long-term success.
Well, I like that we've addressed options. I like that we've addressed that there's an opportunity to do something. So this is really good. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of bring this to a close, and I'm going to ask one last question when we come back, and then I'm going to ask also a closing thought. So I'll get your closing thought, and then I'm going to ask you a final question. But the point is I want to actually let our listeners know that we have here a special gift. It's in the episode description. It basically is a free marketing gap analysis that you can take advantage of. Aprav has made this available to us so that we can more or less assess for ourselves how we're doing as it relates to marketing. So I encourage you to actually go to the episode description and take advantage of the marketing gap analysis. And in doing so, find out what it is you can be doing to more proactively improve your marketing and get the clients that you deserve through the effective marketing strategies that we've discussed today, and others as well. In addition, in the episode description, I want to invite you to check out two things. One, the Universal CRM. This is essentially where you can automate your turnkey processes to acquire the leads that you're needing, those contacts that are with your ideal customers, so that you can nurture them and bring them to the point of becoming an engagement. So definitely check out the Universal CRM as it relates to growing your business and getting the clients that you deserve. That being said, as a summary of our conversation, one of the things that I want to point out is I really appreciated the fact that he had kind of been exposed to accounting, but chose not to pursue it as a career and rather went into the marketing. But nonetheless, years later, he circled back around. And that's kind of fun, because what it means is it did somehow resonate, because obviously working with the firms, he saw that he could effectively market those services and help them grow their businesses. But for whatever reason it may be, he had that entrepreneurial drive and knew that he needed to work for himself and actually work more with these clients as peers. And he made that leap, as many of us do, as it relates to becoming an entrepreneur. He, in that story, obviously shared with us a variety of marketing strategies that we ought to consider. I felt that it was important at the beginning to define what marketing is, and I appreciated his explanation of what marketing is for us as accounting firms. But we even dove further into that as to identifying that there are different strategies that we can implement. His analogy being that of hunting, fishing, and farming, realizing that each has their own unique let's say emphasis or priority, but at the end of the day, none of them are standalone, that we need to consider having maybe one or two rather than all three. And that helps basically have a strategy for the business. I really appreciated the conversation as it related to KPIs, metrics that we need to be watching as accounting professionals. We like tracking the numbers, watching what's going on, knowing whether or not there's an ROI associated with it. So I felt that the KPI discussion was very, very important. But then at the same time, I also appreciated the fact that as accounting professionals, we do have sometimes things that stop or preclude us from moving forward. And he addressed very well that sometimes we do actually have a strategy, but we fail to implement. And we covered that, I felt, very well, so as to understand that it's very common, but at the same time, something that we need to address. And we do need to really follow through with what we've actually defined as our strategy that we're going to be using in our business. And although we didn't dive into the key terms of, let's say, your avatar, your ideal client, and what I also pointed out is your unique selling proposition, he did define well the fact that we need to be intentional and deliberate with our efforts to get the clients that we ultimately deserve and desire. So that being said, I've got one last question, and then I'm going to ask you for a closing thought. My last question for you is, what are you grateful for?
Oh wow. So I'm grateful for a lot of the opportunities I've had. I didn't share this at the onset about my story, but my parents came to this country as immigrants when I was very, very young,
Mm,
and so we came here with nothing, right? And so I've been given a lot of opportunities that I'm very grateful for in terms of how I was raised here, the education that I had, the opportunities I had to get into a career path as well as business afterwards. I am very grateful for the clients that I have and that we work with, and being able to have those relationships and being able to see them succeed. I'm very grateful for.
very good. And what closing thought might you have?
So, just trying to kind of capture, roll up everything that we talked about here today, is you can be successful with your marketing. I know there's folks out there that are struggling. They're not sure what to do. They're not sure who to believe. Um, you did share the link for the marketing strategy assessment. I'd encourage the listeners, if they're interested, go to that link. The link is just at our website, fixer.com, and then /fix your marketing, all one word, right? Take the marketing strategy assessment, takes 10, 15 minutes, and it'll kind of benchmark where you're at with your marketing and opportunities that you can make to improve your marketing. If you would like to go beyond that, set up a conversation with us, I'd be happy to extend an invite to any of your listeners, Roger, that want to connect with me, and even maybe just hop onto a call and pick my brains on anything that they heard here today. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me an email, connect with me through the website, whatever works for you.
Perfect. Well, I definitely appreciate not only that offer to do the assessment, but your time. A part of what I'd like to point out is I think we've addressed a number of things that people need to consider as it relates to marketing. So I've enjoyed our conversation, and I felt we were able to hit on a number of topics or issues that people are facing. So I'm glad we were able to have the conversation we did. As for my listeners, I do want to encourage you, if you haven't already, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the podcast. Love to have you as somebody that's getting the notifications each and every week when we release an episode. We also want to invite you to go back and listen to past episodes. We coincidentally have on universalaccounting.com a highlights reel or playlist of various things that we've actually had over the years as we've interviewed the experts as it relates to various topics that may be applicable to your current situation today. So I invite you to go check out those playlists that are focused on marketing, selling, pricing, mental health, tech stack, staff training, client onboarding, client retention, just a variety of topics that you can actually dive deeper into as it relates to your current situation. The other thing I'd like to do is invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference for owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. This is a conference where you can come each and every year and learn from the experts as to things that you need to be doing to work on your business. It's here you can also visit with and meet peers, individuals doing exactly as you're doing, and more importantly, learn from them. And in that process, actually make collaborations, and basically friendships that you can build on over the year. In addition, you can meet the staff at Universal Accounting Center, those individuals that are committed to your success to help you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal. So take advantage of this opportunity. Register now and join me for GrowCon. It's each and every year in May. The other thing I want to mention is, as it relates to this topic and other topics, if you have any questions, things that you'd like to discuss as it relates to your business, building the premier accounting firm in your area, feel free to give us a phone call. You can reach us at 801-265-3777, or you can visit us online at universalaccountingschool.com. There you'll find the information you're needing to build the premier accounting firm. So with all that being said, thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day and be safe out there. And always remember, if it's about accounting, it is Universal. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks.
Very good. That was wonderful. I appreciate that. That was a great conversation. So I'm going to now have you go to the chat and see, as I pointed out earlier, that text, and have you do that little promo reel.
Sure. So just a heads up, and I don't know if it was just me, but there was, I think, 2 or 3 spots where your video froze. Like I was still hearing the audio, but like for about 5 seconds or 10 seconds.
It's okay. It's actually a buffering thing, so it shouldn't actually freeze in the end result.
Oh, got it. Well, I did not see, nor did I notice.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
No worries. Thanks for catching.
Okay, so this is a poor. Okay. Do you want me just to go ahead and do that, or do you want
when you're ready?
Whenever you're ready.
Hi, this is Apoorv Dwivedi. It was a pleasure to record with Roger an episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. We discussed what marketing is within the context of accounting and advisory practices. We talked about different forms of lead generation, from the analogy of hunting, fishing, and farming. We talked about referrals, and we just had an overall great conversation. I invite you to listen and join us.
Perfect.